Destination Clinton. A tourism meeting hosted by the Clinton Economic Development Commission, John Allen, Chairman, Andrea Rue, Tourism Subcommittee.
Appreciate EDC making this happen, and our Connecticut Economic Resource Center folks, Satan's here and Courtney Henderson is on our way. And then everybody from the community that's come out to join us in a discussion about what we can do to spearhead tourism in town. Just a little bit about the initiatives on the town side. Obviously tourism and economic development are a high priority for us. Trying to find ways, creative ways to make Clinton put them on the map. And so we're looking to the community as well to come up with some ideas that might be creative and think outside the box. So essentially we're just looking for a free flow conversation and get some of those ideas out there and see what we can actually start actioning in the next couple years.
I'm John Allen. I think we'll talk to everybody here. This is like hopefully the beginning of something that maybe continue on, informally or formally. When you really look at the town, how important tourism and the broadest definition of what the term is, it's great. We have places for people to eat, to enjoy, to stay, to play, and everything else. And we haven't really kind of put things together. And from your point of view, if I was sitting where you are, I'd say, we have a lot of important say in what the town does. And it really hasn't kind of come together as a group. I mean, it's called a lobbying group or whatever it is. But there's a voice here that I think should be heard more loudly as far as development in the town. What we do, how we plan the future, what we go, what we need, what we do too much of. If there's some, whatever it is, that should be somehow coming back. And if it comes back as a group, if it comes back as an organized group of people saying, no, this is what the tourism little sector of the town thinks, is a lot people hear it a lot louder, and that's all it is. What we try to do is keep this as informal as possible, but still we have a wonderful guest from the Mystic Tourist Board, which is, there's Mystic and then there's Clinton. We're not saying we're going to ever be Mystic, but what's standard operating procedure? How do towns operate that really have a successful tourism operation? It's kind of an aspirational way of where we could basically move to someday. And what should we do? It's just a long process. We're heading into the non-tourist time of the season, so it's a really good time for people that aren't putting boats in the water or feeding people or whatever we do during the winter. Maybe we could organize ourselves into some way of saying, this is what we want to do in the future. We should promote the town as a tourism thing. That takes money. We're not here with money. Everybody knows what the town is with money. But there are ways of promoting ourselves as a cohesive group that I think would cut through a lot. It is a great place. I mean, it's one of those towns where people come here and they say, God, you live in it's a great town. Everybody that visits me, they're surprised. And I don't think people should be surprised. They should be anticipating coming here for a good time. So it's marketing and it's rah-rah and it's cheerleading and all that, but I think you people represent a very important part of the town when it comes to our economics and our future development, so thanks for coming.
Should we do just a quick introduction so everybody knows who from the municipal side? Obviously I'm Selectman Christine Goupil. John Allen is the chair of EDC.
Andrea Rue on the Economic Development Committee.
Bill Sengel, Board of Selectmen.
Jack Sherman, Board of Selectmen. Tim Guerra, Board of Selectmen.
We also have representation from the Chamber of Commerce.
Ken Hartley, Chamber of Commerce.
And Kurt Carr, Economic Development Committee.
And photographer.
We also have Sadie is from CERC, Connecticut Economic Resource Center. So if you have any other questions later on, you know who to go directly to.
Just a question on Sadie too. CERC has been working with the town. One of the things we did do this year is we got some money together to get some professional people, and CERC, which is kind of a non-governmental, like an NGO in the state, the whole purpose is to help economic development throughout, and they're professionals. They know what things are, they know how to hold our hand. So Sadie's not only here to listen, but also to help provide advice for what kind of resources the state or somebody else can provide us if we need something. So it's been very helpful so far. Everybody at CERC has, so it's been money well invested.
Christine, you should say what CERC stands for.
Oh, Connecticut Economic Resource Center. So CERC works with a number of other, I'll let Sadie
Yeah, we work, we're a nonprofit in Connecticut, and we work with a number of different towns just to help them grow their business base. So
They do a number of courses or seminars throughout the state that offer things, anything from brownfield remediation and trying to get things back on the tax roll to streamlining your regulatory process or the land use. So there's all sorts of great courses that both the commissioners in the town and employees of town employees can take to try to help stimulate their own economies.
Oh,
To take the picture.
I think we're going to start with, I don't know if you got notes, what you want to say? Just tell them how things work.
Come on this side of the table.
Yeah, I know, I was gonna say.
How come you're so successful?
How come we're so successful? I'm Kristen Hartnett, membership manager at the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce, and part of the tourism initiative, yes. So I'm going to give an overview of Mystic and the perception first. Mystic is an idea, it's a region, it's not actually a town. So when I come to Clinton and I see the town hall, I'm kind of envious because there's a government to look to, you know, town council, selectmen. What Mystic is two towns on either side of the Mystic River. So the Mystic River flows down into the Long Island Sound, and on this side is the Groton side of Mystic, and on that side is the Stonington side. So two separate towns, two completely different population bases, two different ideas of living. Groton has, say, Pfizer and EB building equipment for submarines, the submarine base, you know, this very, very busy, huge town. And then over here, Stonington, very quaint, old fishing village. They kind of like to keep to themselves, would you agree? Scott is here from Stonington. And the population is very small. So Mystic itself is a region that encompasses part of these two towns. That makes it very challenging to actually have, say, a coalition or a committee or a government or a budget for marketing. So what do? Why is it so successful? The Mystic Seaport Museum has been in existence since 1929. So since 1929, somebody got the brilliant idea to preserve their shipbuilding history and started making a museum and started charging, 10 cents to come into a room with artifacts from the 1800s. Since shipbuilding was starting to go towards steel and more manufacturing, they began then to create what is now kind of seen as Mystic. So that's a long time ago when people are, still coming down. And then, of course, our Mystic Aquarium is another attraction. So those two huge attractions, the aquarium attracts about 750,000 people a year or more. The seaport claims 250,000, 300,000 a year. They attract tourists. They are putting a lot of their efforts and their monies and their strategies into attracting people from outside our area, outside the state, New York, Pennsylvania, Boston, Massachusetts. So we let them do that. We let them use their resources. When I say we, the Mystic Chamber of Commerce, the town of Groton, the town of Stonington, we kind of let them use their budget to attract people to Mystic. And also, I can't forget Mystic Pizza. So we just celebrated our 30th anniversary of Mystic Pizza, the movie, which was so popular when it came out. And it launched a lot of careers, Julie Roberts for one. And this is still one of the #1 attractions in the town of Mystic. People, and maybe you've done this yourself, no offense, come to take pictures of themselves and their family outside the Mystic Pizza restaurant. So this is a powerful, powerful tourism attraction which those of us that live here, live there, and believe in all the history and try to preserve the history are, dumbfounded that this is still a big deal. But we're gonna.
So we need a movie?
You need But the thing is, TV show. Well, back then though, that's the thing, is 30 years ago, movies had a lot more influence. Movies had a lot more, they were more evocative. Now it's like a dime a dozen for movies, and you can create anything. Whereas back then, it seemed like that was really an organic type of movie that would show you a little bit of what Mystic was like. And even then, in that movie, they're complaining about tourists. So you've got the drawbridge, you've got planning and zoning. That's another two words that are very, very important for tourism, because we've worked really hard to make sure that nothing's changed, for the 100 years. But that can also be a deterrent. I'll get to that later. So that's kind of my overview of what is going on in Mystic. What this reminds me of is we have several different organizations working to try to help the businesses in Mystic, on the Groton and the Stonington side. Again, you've got different laws for businesses in the Stonington town as you do for Groton. So the Mystic Chamber of Commerce tries to straddle both of those things. We try to be a kind of administration for the Mystic region. And we also have two huge casinos, don't forget. So Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods. A lot of people were very skeptical when they came into the region. Very upset that they were too modern, too big, too commercial. They have poured thousands, if not millions of dollars into our economy in Mystic. And again, advertising to outside the state, outside the region, outside New England, outside the country, to get people to come to that area. And then once they're there, maybe come to Mystic. We also have a perception that, and I've heard that this is similar here, is that you get to the aquarium and there's a place called Old Mystic Village, which is like an outdoor mall right off of exit 90, and it's built to look like it's colonial. So people get off exit 90, or they come here on a bus, and they get off the bus, they go to the aquarium, and they go to the Old Mystic Village, which is an outdoor mall, and then that's Mystic. They've been to Mystic, and they get back on the bus, and they go somewhere else. And that is so discouraging for us, because we have this beautiful harbor, and this beautiful drawbridge, a very charming village, and again, the planning and zoning, we've got no neon signs anywhere, you make sure that your sight line is always inspiring. We did a streetscape, the state paid for a streetscape. We were lucky enough to be chosen as one of the towns that completely had our Main Street redone. So our sidewalks were torn up, and we put up like those old-fashioned lamp posts, there's no more electric wires going, they're buried underground now. So that was a huge deal. It was very painful for our businesses. It was like 2 years. And then we redid the bridge too, because the bridge had lead paint on it. They completely painted over the bridge. So it was 3.5 long years of businesses holding on by their fingernails, because sometimes right in the front of your storefront would be things all torn up. But it was something that had to be done in order to modernize the town, in order to get ready for what I think is happening right now. So that was foresight, and we were lucky enough to receive monies for that complete redo. We did lose a couple businesses, they kind of gave up, but so what's happening now is the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce is one organization that's working to promote our businesses, that once we get people into Mystic, then where are they going to go? How are we going to get them to keep going? How are we going to get them to stay another day, stay another 2 days, stay 3 days? Use Newport just as a day trip instead of having them go away to Newport. Newport is one of our biggest competitors.
And what kind of ideas are they coming up with?
What they're coming up with is how to keep people here. Yes. So we really didn't have to come up with ideas. The restaurants did it. So Dan Miser started Oyster Club. I think it's been 7 years now, 7, 8 years now, since he opened Oyster Club. And this was a huge deal. So the streetscape happened, right? So now it's much more friendly. It's not like this old-fashioned mom and pop town. It's like, oh, it looks a little hip. You know, it looks a little more clean, looks a little more like the pictures that you see in magazines. And then Dan Miser opened Oyster Club. And I would have to say that that was one of the biggest harbingers of change that happened. He got a New York Times article wrote about it. And then his restaurant was a different type of restaurant. It wasn't just seafood, it wasn't just, you know, a clam shack. It was farm to table, and it was sustainable, and he was bringing this new mentality to the restaurant industry. And he was raising the bar. He totally raised the bar, and locals loved it, and tourists loved it, and he opened another restaurant called the Engine Room. Burgers, bourbon, and beer, and that's down the street too. And again, the inside of the restaurant was thoughtful and intense and modern, but yet retained that old feel. You know, it looked like an old engine room. So it looked like a brewery. You guys have been into a brewery. Well, this kind of image is now what's popular, and that's the atmosphere that's really attracting young people, and it makes the locals feel like, well, we're hip too. So he opened another restaurant, and that was also successful. And so this is what I would have to say is what happened, is that the restaurants started to raise the bar, and we became a foodie town. Suddenly we've got all these restaurants popping up, we've got juiceries popping up, you know, there's breweries popping up, and it became a foodie town. We had an article written about us in the Boston Globe. And
Who's coordinating the articles?
so there's a number of people, right? So the Mystic Chamber of Commerce, there's also the Eastern Regional Tourism District, which was funded by the state. So the state has 3 districts, and the Eastern Regional Tourism District has Mystic and 27 towns, 42 towns, and 2 of the 2 casinos. So they spend a lot of time also social media, writing articles to national magazines, Yankee Magazine, for instance, and getting attention that way. But then they were defunded. So they were left with nothing. They could do nothing. And then we had to take on their fulfillment. So when people call up and they ask for information to be sent to another state, then we call it Mystic Country, the Eastern Regional Tourism District, they couldn't fulfill. So we had to take on some of that burden. There's also public-private partnerships. There's several of them. The Mystic Tourism Coalition, the Mystic Downtown Merchants, and that's what this reminds me of. The Mystic Downtown Merchants was a committee from the Mystic Chamber about 5 years ago, and they decided that they wanted to be their own nonprofit organization. And since then, they have come up with new events to bring business into downtown. They've used their social media and their budget, which is from contributions from the local businesses. There's only about 100 people that are involved at the most, I would say. The people that are really doing the work are about 30 of them, but there's 100 people that pay attention to what's going on and also kind of donate. And that particular organization, Downtown Mystic Merchants Association, they're responsible for the pirate invasion, which you may have heard about, that is in Mystic Eats, which used to be Taste of Mystic. So they do events and they keep the money and then they promote their downtown area. And it is a lot of volunteer work, and it's a lot of chopping wood and carrying water, and it's a lot of negotiating with, let's say, other like websites and other organizations like us and the Eastern Regional Tourism District. We're also going up to the state constantly, and I don't know if you guys are also doing this, but we've been going up to the legislation constantly asking for a bigger budget for the state, bigger budget for our regional district representation. So what other questions did you have on that piece of paper? Because I don't want to get too far off. I keep talking about
Do you
this.
guys have sewers?
We do have sewers. Yes.
Big difference.
Is it?
Yeah, we don't. And that's a big problem we have. And when you talk about the Mystic, You have Stonington that doesn't want change, and you've Groton that, in my mind, doesn't want change. We have the same thing.
Yeah.
We have people here that do not want any more tourism here, and then we have people here that want tourism. And we've sat in these meetings over and over and over again, and we keep coming back to the same stuff.
Right?
Is it easy to park in Mystic?
Well, no, it's not.
Of course. Is it easy to park in Newport? No.
No,
You walk
yeah.
miles, go anywhere you want to go.
Right, it's
But
a
we
perception,
still
really.
constantly, it's the same meetings.
Yeah.
What makes people come to your town?
Yeah.
And you have, you said, what, 1.5 million between the aquarium and everything else? We have 4 million
Yeah.
from the
That's what I
mall.
heard, that's what I heard.
All right, so we already have more people coming to our town than you do. But we can never get those people, we cannot agree on how to get those people into our town because half the people don't want them on Main Street. Because it is a pain in the neck. And we run into so many problems with parking and yeah, it's a pain in the neck to park. Anywhere you go is a pain in the neck to park. You could go to West Hartford. They have parking garages 4 stories high.
Yeah, yeah.
And you still cannot find a parking spot and you wait 2 hours to go to the cheap factory. I mean,
Yeah, we've done studies and we found that in fact there's plenty of parking in Mystic and it's just a perception per se. So we're really not even looking to change that idea. We're just kind of trying to have to live with that parking perception. Scott, you had some comments? Scott?
Sure. So I'm Scott Bates, I'm chair of the Connecticut Port Authority, so I just came here for that, but I'm glad I came for the whole conversation. And from the port angle, I think it ties into this bigger conversation because I've gone past Clinton my whole life. I grew up in Stonington, but I've gone past it. And I go past on the highway. I had no idea until I visited with your harbor commission. We've got like 1,000 boat slips here. And what a beautiful town this is. I didn't know that. And I think that's the case with a lot of those 4 million people that come through. And why, I grew up in Mystic. So I can tell you, I was one of those smart aleck kids that when tourists would come by and say, which way is the seaport? They'd say that way, but it was actually the other way. Because you don't want all these New Yorkers coming in. And we have some of that. I have to say the town's been transformed in all good ways because I've lived in different parts of the country. What happens if the town is bypassed is that its tax base stagnates and declines. The housing stock deteriorates. Nothing says today is going to be like tomorrow unless you actually change for the affirmative and you take the steps to do it. The town you love is not going to remain the same. It's either going to improve or decline. And I think that's something you have to talk about with your neighbors. It's hard. It's not easy. People gripe, complain. It takes forever to get through P&Z. But over time, it's worked. And Mystic's a place that is, known worldwide, but it's still the little town I grew up in. So, it's that balance and it's hard. And constant engagement is what I recommend for you. And then before I run up to Hartford, because all of you pay my salary, I have to go do my job. Just know that I'm talking with your first select woman about bringing our board of directors for the Port Authority here so that they see the investments. We made small investments here with your town recently for the dock. But I think there's more that we can do. And I'm big on Clinton after having seen the waterfront. So looking forward to seeing the minutes of this meeting. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
One thing I'd like to, while on the topic of the waterfront, obviously the Cedar Island has a role in bringing people in. And we've, for our part, we're trying to increase our footprint. We applied for, a couple Marina of the Year things that would just hopefully get more people in. We're redoing the pool. We've added a few things. One issue that we are having is within the Hammonasset River, in the outer harbor, it's shoaled to the point where at some points at low tide, it's only about 5 feet deep. A 40-foot sailboat draws 7 feet of water, and that could be a huge problem. We had worked out with the Army Corps of Engineers an emergency dredging plan just to address some of these issues, but we're running into problems with the state sort of telling us that we might interfere with fishing runs, which we do not want to do. And obviously we have our commitment to the environment is, can be seen in our research laboratory and the work that we do to try to do as little as possible to interfere with it. But we are working with the state to try and address this because, this qualifies as emergency dredging. This isn't, we're not putting in a tennis court. Like this is, if a boat runs aground because they can't get to the channel, that's the last thing that anybody wants.
So here we do the direction.
No,
He's the one that gives us.
So thank you for that reminder, and send me an email, I'll get it to our guys today.
No
Follow up.
We did that too, we dredged, just that, around that same time. I feel like when you're talking about, like, it either declines or it increases, that Mystic was in jeopardy of doing that about 8 or 10 years ago. And that it was just a matter of kind of turning our energy that way and hoping, and getting lucky in a lot of ways, like waiting for that one little crack to open in the state legislation or even in your departments.
Before Scott leaves, because Andrew got immediate attention, is there anything that you want from the Port Authority before we pick up? He's dispensing things.
Yes, indeed, sure. And your first selectman knows how to get a hold of me as well. Thank you. All right, well, thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
I think we got moved into the right session, which is what I wanted to, for vernacular anyway, I think that's what it is. Just a couple of analogs here. One is, as John said, we do have 4 million people, and we've been, the EDC have been trying to talk for years. 4 million people a year come to Clinton Crossing, and they don't come just in the summer. I mean, the biggest time of the year is the Christmas time. And it's 4 million people, 1% is 40,000 people. How do we get them down here? So if you look at the town, you've got the marina, all the marina, everything that's going to go down there, which has been resurgent. You've got Clinton Crossing, and you've got everything in between. Now, just a personal work, we've been trying to work, the EDC has to get a trolley. Actually, a capital expenditure to get a trolley that would take people from the marina, which I think you guys, Chris, don't you have some kind of chauffeur thing now from Cedar Island or not? No? No, you don't, Andrew?
Oh, no, sorry.
But they actually have one that would run parts of the, and do a trial program that would take people from the marina into town, into our restaurants, into the bed and breakfast, wherever we got there, and back up to Clinton Crossing. I mean, make it a day trip, because the marina is a huge heart, we got almost 2 hearts in town, Clinton Crossing and the marina during 9 months of the year, or 8, 6, whatever you guys feel. That's something that's been on the board for a long time, and coming back to the initial statement, if you as a group, before I forget it, if we could end this meeting when we end it, to have 4 or 5 of you delegated to work together with us to actually codify all these problems and to write up a recommendation with the EDC. If this is what we need, we'll start marching with you on this thing. But not, right now, a lot of these things go into ether and nobody ever does anything about them long term. But John's always been very vociferous about this stuff. It's, right now, here's the stuff we got to do. If you get behind, actually, we should have a trolley driving around town in the summer. Merchandise the shit out of it. All the ads on it, and the Clinton Crossing, and welcome to the coolest unknown place. Whatever we do, it's obviously a bold, open, not to say a bold open, but a bold way of saying, let's promote the town, of having it start in the country, having it start in the summer. That's the kind of thing. There's a lot of opportunity here, but, I agree with everything, I'm almost as frustrated as all you folks are. The only way that we're going to get any of these things stuff done is a sustained effort and actually flex some muscle. And there's a lot of muscle sitting around this table, and a lot more that's not here. Clinton Crossing couldn't make it, but they're always on board for these things. And they're very up for some way of connecting Clinton Crossing to the town, because they're finding it's very mutual benefit for them too. More of their business is coming from within the 25-mile radius than it used to before. I mean, it's really getting down to they need Guilford and Madison and all these places. The other point is, it's not just Clinton, and I know you guys compete with all these people. It's the shoreline. Thinking even bigger that, we compete with each other and we compete with other towns, but you don't just sell Clinton. I mean, when you're trying to talk about Mystic, I mean, here about Mystic, there's 2 towns, somehow they've even put the casinos in there, which has nothing to do with Mystic in my mind, but it's part of the marketing area, or the virtual marketing area. We got Ham and Acid here. We've got Madison. We've got everything else that goes on around Madison restaurants we could play here. Not to say we should send people down, although you do have restaurants in there. It's almost a frame of mind of Clinton represents the shoreline of Connecticut in kind of the most undiscovered part of it. Everybody knows what goes on down in Fairfield County, and people are going on Mystic, and people know what New London is, but somehow the gap between New Haven, or Branford anyway, Branford and Old Saybrook or Old Lyme, there's kind of this dark hole. And, if we could, at the end of this, have, pick some delegates. I mean, just pick some delegates. You guys are busy. you're all working hard, but if there's some way we actually sit down and say, form a committee, or whatever, the Tourism Guild of Clinton, here's the things, we go after the Board of Selectmen, we go after the planning and zoning, we stand in front of these people.
And there's money from the state too, like if you become like a Main Street organization or something like that, then all of a sudden next year when somebody gets elected differently, all of a sudden there's money from the state and you guys are positioned to take that.
There's an organization that exists already, and some of you know it's called Placemakers. We started it about 5 years ago in town. It's a 501c3, which is the important part of this conversation, because it was a nonprofit. And then it was ostensibly created this thing to make the town a better place for people to come and enjoy themselves, either live in or whatever. It's an existing vessel right now that could very easily become the 501c3 for the tourism people. We could actually, then you could actually recruit, you can get money, it's tax deductible, you could actually go ahead and start something with it. So there's things out there, and I just think we need the ignition of everybody understanding you all have a lot more in common about what the problems are than you have competing with each other.
When we actually added Greater Mystic Chamber, we added the greater part maybe 20 years ago, and there's still people that are very upset about it. Like they were like, we're not going to join anymore because it's not just about Mystic. Like you're saying, include the casinos, but we have these for survival, really. Otherwise,
yeah, I understand it's hard. Your business is your business. You want to make sure that, and it's not to say to start that way, but I mean, just thinking bigger. Right now, it's how do we get people to understand? First, my wife was in advertising agencies. First thing is just awareness. And when you start a job like this, it's just awareness of what the town's all about and how great it is. When people drive through, and how do we get people down here? How do we get people to understand there's something below exit 63 that's this, which when they get right back on the highway, they go back and forth. Now, hopefully, the development we have up there has a hotel in it. It'd be nice to have a destination people come at, but there's an awful lot you could gripe about, and I'm sure it'll tell me now, but codify this, make something happen after this meeting. Is what the whole intent of this thing was, to have people that are really pissed off start organizing their pissed offness.
Well, not even pissed off, but ideas, to generate ideas of how we can work together. So I volunteer as a member of the Economic Development Committee to spearhead that effort. If there's a couple people in the group that want to work with me and start to meet just a smaller group representing the larger group, we'll work with the Chamber of Commerce, we'll come up with some ideas, and maybe we can start this off. What we're going to do now is break into two groups, and we're going to ask, Stacey's going to take minutes at one of them, and I'm going to take notes at the other. We do have almost everybody's email address. If we don't have your email address yet, make sure you get it to us so that we can then create a follow-up document to send out and what was generated out of today. So,
Andrew, can I just say one thing?
yes, please.
Last time I went to one of these meetings, and I think the trolley idea, it might be a good idea. I don't think people like public transportation anymore. I think people would rather get in their own car and drive. People don't like to be stranded places.
You can't with a boat, though. See, that's the thing. If you get off the boat.
Well, if you get off a boat, that's a different story, and that's something you can think about, because what we're not addressing is Long Island, and we could be drawing a ton of people into our harbor from everywhere. Everybody here goes to Greenport for lunch, and no one from Long Island comes here. I mean, and I talked to, I have Lobster Landing right next to me, and I know when I open up my restaurant, which is very insignificant to my whole business whatsoever, he was very against it. He thought I was taking business from him. He's had 3 better years than he's ever had, and we still, did almost $1 million. So, restaurants don't compete with each other; they feed off each other. I believe.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to have a lobster roll every day. I mean, you could be a millionaire and not want to have a lobster roll every day. It's just not the way it is. People want to have change. They want to be walking around. And restaurants breed shops. You're going to have the restaurants first, and then people get out of the restaurant and they walk around the shops. It's the way it goes. Parking, I don't think you're ever going to solve the problem. We just don't have enough parking. You have to just get creative about it. But the one thing that Clinton Crossings talked about when we were here last time is that they had applied, I guess, for the permit to be able to have the Connecticut tourism at that exit because they closed off the one on 95. And I mean, you talk about an immediate impact that could happen if we could get the whole Connecticut tourism off that exit, and they said they would even man it, put a kiosk up, have somebody standing there where you pull into the Clinton Crossing as Connecticut touring, and then we'd have, flyers, things to do, maps of what you could do in the town. That would make, a very immediate action, and they would, they said that they would actually man it. but I guess they were getting,
So we do have a beginning version of what your map concept is that Kirk has been working on for the last like 8 years.
John's a contributor. So.
John's a contributor, so you're aware of the document, and that is distributed at Clinton Crossings. We do, the Economic Development Committee, out of our small budget, does do twice a year or 3 times a year what they call a standees, which advertises, come to Clinton for this event. So we
do it for Clinton, Christmas in Clinton. We did one for the Memorial Day,
Right.
and we did one last year. We didn't do it this year, we did it the year before, but we should have done something for the fireworks and didn't. Well, that would have been an opportunity. There are lots of opportunities. Problem is money, and to some degree also skill sets and talent and getting somebody to put this stuff together.
What John is saying all these back to something. We've been trying, ED's been trying to get them to be more receptive at Clinton Crossing of doing things, to actually be able to promote Clinton. They kind of like to be a little softer on this thing eventually, because they really don't. They figure they're the largest taxpayer, we don't have to do much else. They're good people, but it's like, they don't have to. This is the kind of pressure you can put on. If everybody, if we had an organization saying, hey, look, we want to send people up there, you want people to stay, if they want people to stay too, it's almost like the tables, the Clinton Crossing is, they don't want people to leave. Stay at the table, we'll bring you your drinks, nobody's leaving. But that's the kind of thing, instead of having just somebody say it, or the EDC saying it, of having, pretty much this whole group down here would really like to have some way where you can promote, and it could be this shoreline, it doesn't have to be just Clinton. It can be some way of letting people know what goes on along the shoreline. But this is the kind of thing, I said, the pressure we can put on people to maybe give more than they've been giving. Because right now, we've been trying it. We have Clinton Crossing in a couple times a year, tell them what we really need, and they go back and talk to people in Indianapolis or wherever Simon is headquartered. And no, but this is the kind of group that maybe, not heavy lifting on your part, it's just kind of like signing up for it, and we would do the supplication.
Well, also, I think what John is saying is that, what I heard out of what this has done is this is an evolution. It doesn't happen overnight like this. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But if we make an effort and work concerted together to create something, I definitely heard the articles. So maybe the chamber can work on getting some articles about what's happening in Clinton out onto, into the media. That might be one idea. Maybe the Economic Development Committee can do that. Things of our events to start driving the interest, and maybe we come up with a silly movie or something happens here that we can jump on and really start promoting to start the fireworks. There was an article actually years ago, actually 3 years ago, about how Clinton is the untouched, unknown area. Like people are buying here because they want it to be unknown, or we want it to be known. So we're going to work with you to get it known.
I have a question.
Please.
For first select board. I'm Chris from Indian River Marine Kayaks. This is my wife Ian. Eric, the former
Zoning enforcement officer?
Yeah.
Yes.
said that you were contemplating putting in some changes zoning regarding like home away, VRBO. Is that true?
Not so. Was this maybe a planning and zoning commission initiative?
No. And the reason what I'm getting to is my wife and I own a really kind of weird property in town. There's 4 residential houses, there's a small marina, there's a kayak business, and you wanted to know how to bring in people. We took one of our little houses and put it on VRBO, Airbnb. It's a standalone house. And we brought in at least 50 different people that've never been to Clinton. And the first thing they do is, where can we go to eat, what can we do, and we have a book together. I mean, it's worked out very, very well, and we're thinking about doing it to some of the other houses on our property. But so you're not thinking about changing that?
I have no authority to. That is completely within the realm of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So my understanding is there's no regulation that precludes Airbnbs at the moment, but I don't speak for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right. But I mean, if you want to bring people in, it's a great way of doing it, and it's done very well. I mean, we just did it on a little microcosm for us. Again, we have 4 houses on a small property. But that brought in people, the first thing they do is where do you eat, what to do. So I think that's a great way to bring in people that have never been here before. We get them from Germany, California, Alaska, Ireland. It's amazing who comes to our little place.
And Kathy also has a B&B down the street.
Mine's I do Airbnb, but I'm also a B&B with the town of Clinton. I pay taxes, fire marshal, health director, everybody's been there. The Airbnb bring more out-of-country people. I've had Sweden, Germany, England, Australia, Italy, just this summer. And it's really fascinating to get their opinions on things. But I think one of the charms of our town is we're friendly. This is something everyone says. And they think the homes, they can walk. We have sidewalks. They can walk to restaurants. All of this, they can go kayaking. We have a lot to offer. I mean, sometimes when they say, what can I do? I think, oh God, what can they do? You know, but if I settle down, we've got things going on. We've got Nicetown Beach and Hammonasset.
Does the chamber have a guide?
Which type of a guide?
A guide of what to do in Clinton?
We have a whole room in the back of our office. We have a whole room where we have all the brochures, pamphlets, and everything, menus from many of the restaurants. People who come in from out of town come in there,
Okay.
walk out with their hands full and are often sort of where do we start first.
Okay.
So one of the things, well, there's actually a number of things that are going on in town, and this is through the support of CERC, this is Courtney Hendrickson, CERC, is looking at tourism and some mechanism to have a resource for people, because people are going to go online. They're not so inclined to go to a location to pick up brochures. So we need to find a area on a website to have events, specific events, so that they know it's coming down the pike, but then also resources within the town and or region. And so working with the chamber, working with CERC, and working with the town, that collaborative initiative to get that investment done. That's one side of it. I think it is absolutely necessary to sort of spin where we need to go. Other thing is public transportation. People are using public transportation more. We just had a ribbon cutting. We're going to have a bus route from Madison that takes you all the way up to Middletown. So that's going to create that network up there, the stream back and forth from the train station to Clinton Crossing and back. It's getting them further down, back down to the Marine District. And so some ideas we've floated is there's billboards on Clinton, or on the train station platform that are empty. Putting some investment in and putting some money in and do a billboard about Clinton. These are the resources in Clinton. You get off the train, there's a map of Clinton. This is where you could go. Simple, there's sort of, you always like to say simple, stupid, but simple things that can be done. So public transportation is a priority to help us ramp up some of that investment as well. Another really big thing that needs to get done is looking at the Marine District, the whole Marine District, and where are we going. We need a future plan for the Marine District to accommodate parking, to accommodate pedestrian activities, because it's getting congested down there. There's public safety concerns. But then also looking at the future zoning down there. How is it going to expand? Which direction are they going to expand? Because it's constrained by a residential district. So these are the conversations we need to have, but we need to have the investment in the community in those conversations as well. So that's another initiative that we're going to be working on from that end.
Can I speak to one of the things that you were talking about, the website, that we have a website called thisismystic.com, and it wasn't something that we came up with, it wasn't something that the chamber came up with, or that the Merchants Association came up with. It was something that already existed, that was successful. And when I was doing Google searches or doing the Google Analytics, it kept coming up in the top 20, and I was saying, who are these people, these thisismystic.com people? They were just web designers, they loved Mystic, and they were just putting it together. So we cornered them and made them become part of our organization and guilted them into, contributing to the community. And now it's one of our best engines.
That's cool.
And that's because most of the people that were in the room had no idea how to do that. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And that was a big part of, again, how we stayed afloat. And the Airbnb thing is huge. It's huge. And we decided in this town of Stonington, Groton hasn't touched it yet, but town of Stonington, there was a lot of kerfuffle because anybody that has a B&B has to go through regulations that Airbnb doesn't. And pay more money, and that was a lot of resentment was bred from that. And also in the neighborhoods, people were very upset about parties happening at the Airbnbs, or no restrictions on who would come to visit. But what Stonington ended up doing after all of the debates and all of the meetings was to just leave it alone. They didn't regulate anything. They just said we're just going to leave it alone because it does seem to be contributing to the economy exponentially.
And that's my understanding of where the Planning and Zoning Commission is right now. There is no regulation in place to regulate Airbnbs.
We were curious too, and we had the same concerns, because we live there. We limited the number of people, and we have not had anything.
Any issue.
I mean, we say we live on the property, we say they only can have 4 people, no offense, and we've not had,
But see, this is an example, if this come up on the radar from P and Z, all of a sudden we start reading that the P and Z wants to make
Right.
some moves on this thing. The EDC would probably say, don't,
Well,
but to have the whole group of people say,
Right.
this is good for, here's why, here's what we bring people in from all over the world. You know, basically Airbnb is, I'm a big user myself, a great marketer.
Right.
Great marketer, people just looking through, where can we go? There's the house, there's the town, there's all this stuff. That's the kind of thing, and before somebody does something wrong, we get ahead of it.
right. And we were a little apprehensive too, saying this could be good or it could be a disaster. And it's-
Or you invest in the stuff and then they say no.
Right, and it's worked out awesome. And we have 4 houses on the property. We're thinking about doing it to another property. And we're like, then they're like, if you change the zoning, we're screwed.
Well, that's what I'm saying, this is the kind of thing that when things show up on the radar that people are concerned about, instead of, 4 people in the EDC sitting around thinking they know anything.
Right.
It's to actually have people say, watch out for this.
Right.
Don't do that, don't let them do this.
It's amazing.
Because we stand in front of these boards and argue why, we have to take a vote, we have to do everything kosher, why things should be done this way, and we argue it's for the good of the town's economy.
It is.
If you don't say it, then some people come in and say, I don't want this town to change because Abel Buell made a great town, should never change for the last 300 years. We can fight that a bit. And I think there are more, to your point, John, I think there are more people to understand you can change the town to be a better town and a more productive and a richer town without changing the complete aspect of the town.
Right, and I honestly haven't heard a lot of people being concerned about the town changing. I think what the concerns are with the historic property because they create a sense of place. And maintaining our historic property actually elevates property values. And that's one thing that we have to educate the public on. We have the largest number of historic properties at any town in Connecticut, which is significant and puts us on the map for those people who enjoy tourism of looking at historic properties. So both maintaining historic properties, but finding ways to allow them to expand, maybe in the rear, to keep that historic preservation designation in the front, which also allows them some tax credits, things like that. So there's opportunities for them. But again, creating a sense of place, but growing at the same time, I think is the key message that we have to convey.
One of the other things that we're doing is we're doing a wayfinding in Groton, so having signage that's going to be the same. And this is taking a long time, so we're being very patient about it as far as, getting committees together and deciding what it's going to look like, and do you actually want it up at the casinos, are the casinos going to send people down, do we want to send people back up to the casinos? But it is in the works, the wayfinding signage. And also what's changed is the word waterfront. If you put that on the sign on 95, then you'll probably see a huge change. Because what we've had is we have different signs now for attractions, and that's what is in the works, is that it's going to say waterfront instead of what it used to say, which is just kind of mystic. So.
We are working on we're talking about branding with students. What would be encompassing in that is also the same thing, wayfinding. Creating an identity, a true identity for Clinton, what is that image and what is that slogan, and then wayfinding, so that's something we are working on. I think it's really key, because it'll also help people driving through town, even simple it down to parking signs, having a consistent parking sign image that people know and you can direct it. We have the same issue. We have plenty of parking when you do a parking survey, but people just don't know where it is. And people are generally uncomfortable trying to parallel park on the streets. They want to find that parking lot, but when it's hidden behind areas, they don't know about it.
Chrissy, what's the timeline on that project? I mean, is it something that this group can see before next summer, the beginnings of, or not really?
That's probably about the timeline, really. I mean, we'll have some things in the works this winter and be beginning to draft it. So we're working on an ongoing basis, so we're just moving through projects, and that's one of the projects.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say, I could succeed, but I have 3 businesses in 3 straight towns, Guilford, Madison, and Clinton. We've been in business.
Just introducing yourself to everyone.
Okay, my name is Mike Nuzzo. I own Brand Beats in Clinton, Madison, and Guilford. I started out, when my father opened a business in 1955 in New Haven, we were 63 years old, and still running strong, 3 locations now. We sold our New Haven location. I see it firsthand because I have 3 towns. And I started in Madison in 93, then I moved down to Clinton in the year 2000. I'm in 18 and a half years here in Clinton. I moved to Clinton 23 years ago, I built the house. So I'm invested in this town. I'm invested. The problem I have in Clinton, my business in Clinton is a destination. I got people that come down on the weekends from Stonington, come from Stratford, that come from Bridgeport. I have customers that come all the way down to the shoreline on the weekend to eat my food. Clinton's been very good to me. Clinton's been very good to me. Out of Clinton, my Madison store, I opened the Madison store, I opened the Guilford store. The problem with Clinton for me is that I'm stuck in a building that I've been trying to buy for the last 5 years. I have a landlord that has not put $1 into the building in 18 years. I put in over $150,000 on outside air conditioners. I just redid my whole inside. He hasn't put in 1 penny. I need a new roof. The septic's going to have to be new. I've been trying to buy it for, like I said, the last 5 or 6 years. I can't get nowhere. My building is dilapidated on the outside. I'm not putting no more money into it. I want to buy it, maybe even put apartments upstairs if I ever bought it. I want to sink money into the center of Clinton, but my hands are tied. The problem with downtown Clinton is the traffic flow. That's a big problem. In the summertime, a lot of my local customers that are from Clinton that live west of Route 1, they don't even come to me. They go to my Madison location because it's easier for them to pick up. I hear my customers saying they don't even go to Stop and Shop or ShopRite because the traffic is so horrendous that they just go to Stop and Shop in Madison. It's easier for them. I even have people that work in New Haven that live in Clinton, they pick up at my Guilford store because they don't want to deal with the traffic in downtown Clinton. The other thing this gentleman said was the septic. We don't have sewers. That's a big problem. There's always problems with septics around here. It's just the way Route 1 in Clinton is, it's hard for people to get around in the summertime. The traffic is so much. I have a tremendous amount of business with the marinas, delivery business. I do a lot of business with Cedar Island. It's just the economic development down here is the way Route 1 is set up. And it's a lot of the landlords that own the building. They don't want to do anything to the property.
Can't do much about Route 1, and the septic is a big problem, but that's like heavy timber. Talking about sewers and who's going to pay, I mean, that's $40 million, $100 million kind of stuff. But the landlords is something we've been bumping into, and without putting the names down, there's 3 or 4 names of, I don't know why. I mean, I know these guys are old. Not to say being old is not a good thing. These guys are old. A lot of them are like absentee. They live in, LLCs in Florida and Detroit and all these other places in Massachusetts. I don't know how. Maybe there is a way of how we actually make a concerted effort. Say, look, folks, on behalf of the town, because it's not just you, it's that whole, everything, that whole strip.
Luckily, I'm a destination, because if I was an out-of-towner and I drove by my building, I said, I don't want to go there, look at it. Luckily, I'm a destination.
We've been trying to actually do some pop-ups, where Nico's was, this Navarro's thing, can we put some business in there and get some help from you? They'll charge a lot of money. Can we try a business? If it works, you got a full-time tenant, like a cobbler, somebody fixes shoes in town. People that will never do anything unless the cost of entry is pretty low. I don't know, Mike, about this thing, but there's a big problem. We got a problem across the street too, with the Stafford building and all that over there.
I have a year and a half left on my lease.
Yeah.
This landlord is going to probably triple my lease, and he hasn't done nothing for me. I put in so much money into his building. So my other son's graduating Morgan. This is last year, Morgan this year, and I'm looking for a place for him, and I haven't developed. It wasn't probably no safe for me. I don't know if I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
And I live here. My kids went to school here. I paid taxes for 25 years here. Been very good to me business-wise, but I got to find a place. This guy doesn't want to do anything. I don't know what I'm going to do.
He just doesn't want to sell it all.
You don't want to sell. I have the money. I want to buy it. I want to fix it. I want to.
How's his health? How's his health? Sometimes you're better off waiting to die.
He's so bad, we'll live to 120.
So part of the idea idea with getting a planner in, so we're doing interviews now to look to fill the planning position in the town. We've never had, well, we had a very short-term planner, is to update the zoning regulations in town to make them more attractive to developers. And what could happen is the pressure from, if we're able to update the zoning in the downtown to allow for more density, create design standards, people will eventually start to put investment into those buildings because they're going to get more money out of the building because the zoning allows it. That's going to put pressure on that property owner when things start changing around them to do what they need to do. It is a long-term, unfortunately, a longer-term strategy to deal with it. But again, this is, some pressure maybe from the municipality to say, hey, folks on Route 1, let's get together, let's have a meeting, and what are we going to do to beautify the downtown
You
again?
can't slap them with a blight ordinance, get them
There's not,
slapped around.
unless there's real true blight, as in,
The other thing too, after 5 o'clock at night, the only destination is myself, CBS, Scottish Dave, and Chips. I mean, that's the only destination in downtown Clinton, after 5 o'clock at night.
Well, if you subscribe to the idea that more businesses, even same businesses, like multiple art galleries create a destination, multiple restaurants do create a destination, sort of like what took place with Lobster Landing and Shanks. More people actually is better. Nada's going to be coming in fairly soon, and that's going to create, competition. But competition sometimes is very good because, say they're booked, they're going to wander over to you. Say you're already filled up, they're going to wander over next door as well. And it creates the some sort of dynamics in the downtown where people are walking around, people driving through at a slow pace will say, oh, what's going on? Oh, there's a restaurant, let's pull over. There's a speed limit, I think it's 30 or 25 miles per hour, where people driving through no longer pick up information on the sides of the roads. Their train of vision narrows. So it's actually beneficial to us. I know it's difficult and it's frustrating, but it's beneficial to have that speed limit because it is going to create an economy as we bring in more and more restaurants and more activity in the downtown. So that is our goal, to get the downtown pumped up, more activities. Art district is something that we're talking about as well, to just get more foot traffic.
One of the things that happened for us that was successful as well is once the restaurants came in and that was a way to success, then we started getting regional anchors like Black Dog. I mean, they'd been there before, but that's an example. Island Pursuits, who is also in Sarasota, Florida, and in Northampton, and Seabags. So we started to get these regional anchor retail stores that wanted to locate in the downtown area, whereas before it was just generational, which nothing wrong with that, but these guys will stay open till 9 o'clock. And that makes a huge difference when people are driving through and they've got that profile. So now instead of just one store that's open till 9 o'clock at night, we've got 6 or 7 stores. And the same with galleries. The galleries started to catch on and do that as well. So
And we might actually even have the potential for that with when CBS shifts.
Yeah,
So
that gives an opportunity there, yeah. And that comes down to zoning too, what kind of zoning changes, what kind of traffic pattern changes can come out of that too. There's the Route 1 corridor study, so you grants, longer term grants to do the actual infrastructure improvements on Route 1 that have come out of that study. Some of them are related to traffic flow, trying to redirect traffic so it doesn't create some of the congestion. There's small things that we can do, timing the signals, going back to DOT and saying, are the signals operating consistently, because they get off track every once in a while. Just small things as well.
Courtney, if there's anything that can deal with the, use a polite term, recalcitrant landlords.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish about it, but it does start with a conversation. And so much like we're doing this focus group here today with the tourism interest, we would want to do the same thing with property owners. And that could be townwide, that could be focused on a certain area, but it really needs to happen where they're hearing from the municipality saying, here's our vision, here's what we want, and you're going to meet us here with your investments or your, frankly, disinvestment, and together we're going to determine what's going to work best for the town. So it's helpful to, I mean, for all we know, they don't know what the town is envisioning.
It's a common theme for a lot of
It
people.
is, and it's unfortunate,
These guys don't
and
live
it's
here,
difficult.
they don't care.
It's always a challenge. It's always one of the biggest challenges in economic development. I've been doing this a long time, and it's not easy. But going one by one and having those conversations, it sounds like this guy doesn't want to budge, but maybe when he's meeting with the first selectman, there's a little bit more give and take. Who knows, right? I mean, it's worth a try. And then having a group, 3 or 4 property owners who we've identified as being sort of disinvesting in their properties, same message, And we can do things at the town. We can get a grant and start a small revolving loan fund that says, we will meet you halfway with infrastructure facade improvements. You know, we will help you with the front of your business by doing lighting, sidewalks, you know, whatever it is. I mean, we can go for grants that help, and then there is some peer pressure as, you know, the beginnings of investments are made. Usually, people are a little bit more vocal about, you know, we did it, or our neighbors are doing it, and this is what we really want to see. You know, what about you? And then they kind of get singled out, and hopefully they end up transferring the property and or making the right investments, so.
I don't know if this is good advice, but we did this 4 years ago. We put pressure on the landlords. We ended up having an article in the paper kind of shaming them. Like there was 8 empty storefronts, and we were like, what's up with these empty storefronts? It's just ridiculous. We can't.
I mean, that's
handle it.
what we have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not serving anybody well. You know, it just because, I mean, that's certainly within my okay area of shaming people. And I don't want to lose the pizza, you know? I don't care about Mike, but the pizza's great, you know?
18 years of rent, never been late.
Right.
All he has to do is put 10% back into his property.
Well, that whole thing, the Chittenden property and the whole thing around the corner, that's got so much great potential in the center of the town, and just trying to get them unstuck is a hard thing, you know?
We were just talking about over, you know, we start from we were running 81 where Hull Street is, and then move over. There was significant improvement made in those storefronts.
Yeah.
Maryland Norman's
Yeah,
got,
yeah, yeah.
you know, the beautification that took place down there. So that pressure that takes place with those storefronts improving theirs needs to trickle down, and so maybe some pressure
I
from.
like the health thing though better.
Yeah.
The health thing. It's a lot better.
Why don't you set stringent, why don't you just take that Route 1 corridor that we're having a problem, set zoning up to make it a district so it doesn't encompass everybody in the whole town, and just say, in 5 years you're gonna do, or 3 years you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and make it to the point where they either have to hire a lawyer or they get out.
You can't force, unfortunately, you can't force them to do the things, the mechanisms that we do have the ability to do are change the zoning in the downtown, create a district, and you can create it through historic districts. The state does allow this mechanism where you can put design standards on the properties, but if they're pre-existing, you don't have the ability to put the same pressure on new businesses coming in. So when the businesses transfer ownership, then they would have to comply with the new zoning regulations, so pre-existing wouldn't. But again, that goes to creating the zoning to allow more density that makes your property more valuable, and then hopefully people start to make the investment because it's worth it for them to do. So a number of those things taking place all at once hopefully will stimulate it.
Well, it's too bad because the area you're talking about is where my other business is. And it's Lapone's and the gentleman that bought the old Clinton National Bank. Both of them take pride in it and want it to look good. So when the other landlords aren't doing that, it's because they don't live here.
Correct.
Although the other side where the art galleries and
Freeman Smith
Christie's.
but he's a really different guy, Freeman is.
Is that his name? I
Yeah,
thought
he
it
lives
was
in
Smith.
Madison. You know, his daughter had the thing there, and then she died, but we've been working
Right.
with him on that art gallery. I mean,
Well, he painted, I mean, they
Right.
need to keep it tidy.
he would like to buy the whole block, but he can't because of Scottish dates. But he's a different guy
What
than
about the
dealing with
old
Mike's dealing with
CVS?
across the street.
Try that.
You can actually have a conversation with him
Mm.
and say, you know, let me think about it. We'd like to put something in there. And he goes, oh, you know.
But it's also maintenance,
Yeah.
you know, power wash.
But think about it too, from the property owner's perspective, right? They've not heard, I don't believe, from the town ever before, saying, this is what we want our future to be.
Right.
And that's a big message, that's very important for them
Not
to
just
keep
what
in
Mike wants, but what the
here.
town wants.
Right,
There's a difference,
exactly.
you know?
And it's not to say that as a tenant, he shouldn't have say, he should, but, and it's too bad that they're not listening, but I do think it's symbolic when it comes from the town. We have our act together, we know what we want to be. This is kind of, let me show you some renderings, like this is what we envision our future to be.
The energy.
That can be a powerful message to a landlord who's been kind of ducking under the radar for a long time.
Can't hurt. You know, but it's right, you tried everything you can. That was that's kind of the purpose of getting all you together and more of being a force as a group, not just an individual person talking. And basically then the town becomes the person talking to somebody. I mean, eventually everybody has a breaking point, you know. somebody in my family didn't, but I mean, eventually there's a breaking point. So, yeah, okay, make me an offer kind of thing. Did you want to still do the group thing? I mean,
No, we decided it was a very good organic process, so Sadie's actually going to send out, a donut in my mouth, so sorry.
Do you want to, you have some of the questions you wanted to ask, maybe.
Right, so Sadie's going to send them out, and we're going to have an email exchange back to Sadie, and then hopefully we'll regroup in maybe like after the holidays, and have another follow-up. Where do we go from here?
And also, and just because you guys are so busy, I mean, it is the off part of the year, except for restaurant, but, I mean, do you actually want to, like, assign certain people? I mean, I don't know how well you know each other, but it doesn't have to be everybody. I mean, there's almost a delegation of 4 or 5 that represented the marinas and the restaurants and the B&Bs and what, I mean, it doesn't have to, it's very hard to get a lot of people together a lot.
So this is 10 people. I like this as a representation. If you guys like this, I
But I
like
mean,
this.
Clinton Crossing should be involved in this thing. I mean, they're the draw. I mean, it's, you know, you really want them to be, embrace whatever people decide because they can help.
Okay.
We also need to consider that we have an east end of town. A lot of people think that the end of town, the end of business is at Waterside Lane. You know, but we've got a whole lot that goes on from here to the Westbrook line. A lot of people misunderstand where that line is and think that Westbrook Lobster is in Westbrook, or think that.
So they've all been invited to this?
Yeah, they've all been, they've been invited, but I mean, that is also a whole nother consideration, a whole nother side of town.
But this is something, this is, you know, this is.
We've been struggling with trying to figure out how to.
So part of with the West End, so when you go back to the town plan and conservation development, there's 7 development focus areas, and that is one specific development focus area. And coming up with a vision for that area is part of that. So we need to create sort of an identity to them, and then also sort of talk about what the zoning should take place over them to help them drive where they're going to go. Because right now, they don't really have an identity. There's some nodes that already exist, and we need to stimulate those nodes. So specifically where Walgreens is and the grocery store is, that should be developed further so you're getting people off the road into these resources of stores and things and walking around. So again, creating zoning that helps stimulate that type of environment and creating these nodes all the way down so that there's identity so you can actually direct people to specific shopping centers, maybe named shopping centers. Also walkability, things like that, connecting neighborhoods to some of these areas as well. So somebody comes down to planning and zoning and coming up with a vision for that area. I think the property owners down there don't have a vision as to where they're going to go long-term. Planning and zoning needs to have that conversation with them as well, and we need that planner function, somebody in Houston Town Hall, full-time that can engage with the public and the businesses on that front.
And this tourism group, I think, is a little bit outside of that realm, except for the restaurants that pull.
Well, I mean, you have.
Tourism is our waterfront, is our restaurants. Yeah,
You know.
right, but it's our waterfront is our main, then our town, and then the restaurants that support that. So that's our tourism, like V.
But if you're starting to talk a regional thing, you know, just about another quarter mile beyond that is Pilot's Point, which is another huge marina.
But not in Clinton.
Well, it's in Westbrook, but.
Right, but it's
you
not in
know,
Clinton.
But we
So we're
did-
focusing on.
We've been
We're off
working
from
on- We've been working on trying to pull them in.
Right.
And Beach
I mean,
Donuts.
Lenny and Joe's, just across the line, you know, I mean, it's.
Lenny and Joe's were a member of it.
But just, you know, again, if there's, one of the things you always try to do is not have it, okay, just another meeting that people went to and then goes and evaporates in the ether, nothing happens. So I'd like to suggest that we'll write up, okay, we kind of write up the, what we, maybe the 5 or 6 key takeaways of things that we really should be doing here as a town to make tourism and restaurants and everything easier kind of thing. And the second thing is trying to figure out some way to have either this group or a, you know, condensed group of these kind of people. And there should be more people. I mean, people, Clinton Crossing should definitely, Shamard should be here. I mean, they couldn't be here. I tried with them. Shamard's another. It's a big draw. I mean, you know, it's up there in the hills. When people go there, they say, wow, this is great. And, you know, it's...
That is a destination for us.
It is a destination. They seem to be, you know, kind of aloof up there, but they're part of this thing, too. They also could benefit from 4 million people going through. You know, everybody can. So it's some way of having a kind of a continuing thing. not onerous on anybody's time, not a lot of bullshit, people just talking about what should be done, but actually saying, look, here's the 5 things, what can we do now to make this to happen? What can we do to put some pressure on the landlords that don't seem to care in town? What can we do for the parking? What can we do to make sure the Airbnb stuff is kind of a safe territory for people to invest in? I mean, I think we got 4 or 5 things here, and again, it's the beginning of something, but if we can do anything and just say, this group should exist, and commonality of what we need, it's part. And it, the overriding theme is tourism, with quotes, broadest section of tourism. Westbrook Lobster is definitely part of it. We bring people into town. If we had a trolley, shouldn't it go down all the way to Westbrook Lobster? Yeah, it should go to Lenny and Joe's too, to be honest with you. I mean, it really should. It should. I mean, this is not, business doesn't stop at the borders. People aren't interested in the borders. If people go to Lenny and Joe's and from the marina, who cares? They're bringing a boat in, but they're going to Lenny and Joe's. It's not. It can't be so parochial.
Are there, and I wanted to just know, are there any other, when we start talking about the trolley, everybody's like, oh, that's ridiculous, but as it started to percolate, I think it's a great idea, we thought it was a great idea, it started to percolate. Are there any other ideas that people have that they feel maybe are pie in the sky, but are worth putting on the table that we haven't thought about?
Yes. One idea that I've heard several years ago, nothing came of it unfortunately, but maybe this group will make it happen over time, is a parking authority of some type to organize parking and deal with private property owners who have parking and signage that was mentioned. Because you've got to get control of the parking. There's so many issues, but that's a big one. There's very little public parking, let's put it that way.
So
and organize it in some way.
I think what we were talking about signage is directing people to the parking is part of the battle, so I think that would be first stage. The parking authority, we have to go in and definitely look at where the private, where the public is as well, and determine those resources, and then actually do the number count, because we're going to have to eventually do that. If we're talking about rezoning a downtown, we need to know what limitations there could be. So absolutely, we have to figure out parking and
well, for example, there's 2 churches within walking distance of downtown that have parking, and obviously they own it, but maybe they'd be willing to cooperate for some reasonable remuneration, shall we say?
One of the ways we do that with the churches is that we have the employees park at the churches. The churches have now agreed to let the employees of the downtown area park there instead of having the public there, so that frees up spaces in the regular parking spots.
Okay,
that's a good idea.
You've already done all the things you should be doing.
Well, it just only happened like in the last 10, 12 years, and it's like because of meetings like this, and we met every single month, and people came, people went, but because there was a group, now people come new businesses, and they feel welcomed, and they feel inspired, and they understand kind of what's going on. I mean, even if it's just, airing out your dirty laundry or a bitch fest, it's definitely cathartic, and it makes a change.
Well, I think people care. They want to see it do well. I think everyone as a business wants to see it do well. They like to see Main Street look better and attract people. It's not that complicated.
All I can say is it's painful, and then it's better.
Like raising a child.
No more grapes? There must be not enough coffee in here or something.
And please, everybody have something before you leave.
But do you make sure we have everybody's contact information?
We do.
We do?
Yep.
Okay.
Who said something about the train posters? Was that you, Andrew?
Christine, billboard?
One of the most successful campaigns I've ever had advertising was train posters. And we did Metro North all the way down to New York City. And it was expensive. It was a lot of money. And I don't know if that's putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but if you had an identity like Clinton, Connecticut, and I mean, you're talking about public transportation, we already have it. There's trains that come from New York City here, and if you want to draw people, you could draw people from, Greenwich, Stanford. I have a lot of customers down in Fairfield County, and when they come up here, they're like, boy, this is what Greenwich looked like 25 years ago. And no one wants to go down. Nobody wants to deal with 95. I mean, 95 is a nightmare, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So, I mean, if we had a common ground, and I mean, you could even probably get better shoreline train stations if you had to fill them up. But that's putting people right in the middle of the town that you could draw from, I mean, New York City.
I get a lot of people come to me and they come by train. And I'm in walking distance of the train station.
With the train improvements, once we get the additional platform, we're going to be able to.
And that would be a great place to.
Yes.
And we're not, because we don't have Metro North, it doesn't go this far, so we've been fighting for Shoreline East to come all the way up to Mystic, and that's been shot down.
But you have an Amtrak thing in Mystic, right?
We do, it comes up twice and it goes down
Yeah.
twice, but it's
Yeah.
also $50 to get from here to,
Yeah.
Old
Yeah.
Saybrook.
Really
So
good.
the Metro North thing is a huge, and Shoreline East, it's a huge advantage.
And capitalizing on the schools in New Haven, all the students, I know some of them, the Asian students, a lot of them are coming off Metro North, or not Metro, Shoreline East and walking up to Clinton Crossing. So again, that trolley idea, but then also the public transportation, connecting them to that as well, but also getting more of the students from Yale, even Middletown, to now.
Especially
connect
millennials,
from
you know,
Middletown
younger
as well.
people, they don't have cars. Millennials, you know, like.
Yeah, they're interested in public transportation, so accessing them, getting them comfortable with coming to Clinton for the resources that we have here.
Do you have a brewery?
Not yet, we would love to have a brewery.
That's the first thing that planner should do, because that'll be like that.
The sewers are the big issue, water consumption, and then, yeah, that's the issue. So we have the Unilever property, we keep saying that would be a phenomenal location for a brewery.
We have a brewery that's like, I don't know, as big as a corner of that room, and it's still, and he had to go through, yes, hoops, and he probably has to siphon it through. It's still a brewery.
Put everything through a colander first. Come on.
Yeah, part of it, stimulating downtown goes to Unilever as well. We lost, 250 people in that location on a daily basis, so that really was the driver. I'm sure you experienced the downtime from there as well, and also you as well, from the
So,
standpoint.
nothing else, no gripes, no comments, no like, how come we didn't talk about that? That's the only reason I came there. We didn't talk about it, none of that. So you can leave and not feel like, so we'll send out notes to everybody in the room. Talk to other people with similar kind of concerns that you just know. I mean, this is a list we got just because people we kind of know and who's there. But let people know about it. Think about whether or not you want to do this thing as a group, which is always the best. I think this is a pretty nice group. Add some more people in it. Or you think, look, can we just have a working group of 5 people to get together? The important thing is to consolidate all the concerns and needs and issues and gripes into one codified thing so we can start taking it on to landlords, planning and zoning, whatever. Board of Finance asks for money. We want to do an advertising, a PDI campaign, why it's good. All these people think it's very important for the town. Here's what we'd like to run. It's going to cost $10,000. This is why it's important. Well, this is the people that actually bring money into our town. I think we should do this. It's a lot different when you talk that way than you just think, I think it's a good idea if we want to do something. Bill?
I got to say one more thing. Such a powerful group here. We have charter revision on the ballot, November 6th. Don't ignore it. The changes that are being proposed, and I can't lobby for one side or the other. John can. Don't let him lobby.
Vote for town manager. I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now there's a million other problems in this town. It's not just this. This is what happens. It's the way towns are. They're kind of messy. Everything has to get done. I mean, we're not unique. I've been to the old Saybrook town meetings a few times. We have the same kind of crazy people they got up there. It's not much different. But a town manager is what this thing is. On question 3, basically saying we want to change the form of government to a professional town manager reporting to a 7-person town council, which would be taking place at the Board of Selectmen. The first select person wouldn't exist anymore, be kind of a chairman of the board. They'd all only get a stipend. I mean, it's just no money there. That salary would go to a professional. And, the last 3 or 4 years, the EDC, we've been talking to and visiting a lot of towns. Only 1% of towns in this country have board of first selectmen. I mean, this is nice, but it was great for the 1700s. We need professionals here. I mean, you talk to Courtney, you talk to people, their whole life is, how do you manage a town? How do you run things? All the different, how do you deal with unions? How do you get economic development? How do you get grants? How do you fight lawsuits? How do you get rid of recalcitrant landlords? It's a professional job, and we wouldn't lose track of it. We wouldn't lose control because the person would actually be going to this board of the council. The council would still hire, fire, and be able to focus more on these kinds of things than focusing on the transactional things of how much salt you need for the winter and whether or not you need another police car. And if, that's basically what the board of selectmen do for an hour every day. You don't really see them talk about this. And this is what the people that we elect should be talking about, have somebody professionally doing that. So, I mean, I'm obviously for this thing because I think it's time we need some professional management around here. Not to denigrate anybody that's done it in the past, but times have changed. And,
For the tourism group, do we want to set a follow-up meeting for January, like mid-January, or do people go away? Yeah, that'd be like a 3-month follow-up and kind of get us going before the
To
season?
get onto your thing, every good town has an answer, because there's continuity.
Well, that's
It
it.
does not change every 2 years or 4 years.
It's 5 years,
It's a
4, whatever it is.
It's a continuity going forward.
And also the way this thing is set up is, I mean, if it passes November 6th, it goes into effect a year from now. So the 2019 is the whole year to figure out the right way to hire the person, figure that if you want the right process, getting the right people, this is a professional hire, just the way we hire the police chief. A headhunter, look for the right police chief. We don't go out and find somebody we like who is popular. Vetting, figuring out who's going to vet this or whatever, and then having a transition so that a year from now, you've got a 7-member town council has been elected, you've got a professional person running, town still has to vote, it still has to vote for budgets and referendums, because you got to do these things, and some towns don't anymore. Basically, the council does it. So you can read about this stuff. There's a couple websites, it's a Facebook page, it's going to happen in November. It's probably the most important vote you're going to make. Not to take anything away from Jesse or Adler or any of these other people that are running, but it's a critical, and it could change a lot of this, getting ahead of stuff.
So how about we set up January 16th, Wednesday morning again at 9 o'clock here? And we'll send out a reminder and we'll invite everybody again, and hopefully we'll have a more representative group, and we'll make sure that, but if you all want to put on your calendars Wednesday, January 16th, we'll set that as our follow-up.
And maybe what we do is have some language about business improvement districts for those that want to actually get involved in creating the structure of that.
Okay.
Might be helpful because it's not a government organization, it is a business organization, and there's a lot of strength behind having one of those. So bring your neighbors and say, let's get this done and see what we can.
So you're still going to have the subcommittee of a few of these good folks?
It's your call. I just didn't want to make people feel like...
Because the old saying is, if it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility. It's got to be people.
Well, how about when Sadie sends out the follow-up minutes and notes to this and questions, anybody who's interested in representing the group, let her respond to her email, and then we'll set up a subgroup, and maybe that subgroup will start to meet on a monthly basis if we have a representation from the Marine District, the Restaurant District, the Housing District, hotels and motels and bed and breakfast. Maybe we start there. So respond to Sadie if you're interested in working with that group. We thank you very much for coming tonight, today. It's really a great group, great dynamic. Thank you.
This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.